it's a little strange to preach in these kind of like distanced circumstances, mostly because any question will sound like a rhetorical question because I don't have anybody there in front of me to nod or be like you know, and but I'm also going to assume that any joke I tell will just land wonderfully and is like the funniest thing in the world. So there's no nothing really tells me otherwise. But I'm really happy to be able to share with everybody this morning. And yeah, I was reading this passage over the past week or so and really meditating on it and just seeing like what does God have for me in this passage and what does God have for us? And you know, believe it or not, I've also been thinking a lot about fear or concern or anxiety. I don't know why, but over the last 6 or 7 months, I have felt unusually stressed or concerned. I'm not sure if anybody else feels that way, but it's been, I don't know, an unusual year. And in thinking about that, I've also spent a lot of time thinking and praying and talking to people about how does God want me to respond to my concerns, and how is God going to respond to my concerns? And this passage, I think, has given me a lot of encouragement. I was a few months ago, I was talking to somebody I know who doesn't live in New York, and they were asking me. At this point, the city was opening up to like phase 2, and this person was saying, "Oh, so now that it's opening to phase 2, are you guys gonna go out and do a bunch of stuff? You know, all these things that are starting to open up?" And I was like, you know what? Not really. I don't plan on it. And they just couldn't understand why. If we had been so much more, we had to be so cautious and everything was closed and things like that. Now that it was starting to open up, why would you not just jump on those opportunities and take advantage of all that? And I said, you know, I think that we are still deciding to exercise caution, and I'm not anxious to go and do all those things. And this person who is a believer and who I think meant very well said, you know, just be careful. Make sure that you're trusting God and not allowing fear to influence your choices. And I think I understand where they were coming from, but I also had a conversation with my my therapist, actually, kind of around the same time, and he was asking me about how I was feeling in general. And I said, you know, my family's doing well. I'm healthy. We've got, you know, we have our jobs and everything. Things could be much, much worse. I still have this overlying sense of concern. And he said, well, you're living through an extraordinary and stressful time. Feeling a sense of concern is a pretty normal response to unbelievable circumstances. And I was like, oh, wow, that's actually kind of a nice perspective. He was like, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you still able to enjoy basic things? I said, oh yeah, all of those. And he said, okay, then I'm not worried that you feel a sense of concern. I thought, man, that's kind of nice to hear, because in putting these two conversations together, what I started thinking about is maybe recognizing huge or threatening or unknown circumstances as a cause for concern doesn't mean that I'm not trusting God. Making decisions, even from a sense of wanting to be careful or cautious, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not trusting God. I put on a seatbelt every time I get in a car, and I also trust that God is with me and protecting me. I don't think that me buckling a seatbelt is like an implicit act of rejecting God and his presence and his ability to save me. Actually, I think sometimes responding with responsibility or caution can be an act of trusting God because we recognize how powerless we are in our own strength to protect ourselves or save ourselves. But I think what this passage from Matthew is showing us is that God doesn't want us to ignore the circumstances around us that might cause us to feel afraid. God doesn't want us to act as though other pressures don't exist. What he wants us to do is recognize that those situations exist, recognize that they have some effect on us, and then see how in the midst of those circumstances, Jesus is drawing near to us and bringing us comfort through his power and his presence. God wants to show us not that extraordinary circumstances don't exist, but that he is mighty to save and is more powerful than the most threatening circumstances. So let's, with that in mind, let's kind of look a little bit more at what this passage is saying. So at this point in the book of Matthew, Jesus and his disciples, they've been doing a lot of ministry. A lot of really amazing things have been happening. Actually, a story similar to this, where the disciples are caught out on the boat during a storm, earlier on in Matthew. I think in Matthew chapter 8, we read another story about how the disciples are on a boat with Jesus this time. Storm kicks up. They're really afraid, and Jesus, who was sleeping, wakes up, calms the storm supernaturally, and the disciples are just amazed. Like, who can do this? Who has power over nature like that? So they've seen Jesus do incredible things. He's been traveling, he's been preaching, he's been amassing these large crowds who want to hear from him. And there's also been some challenges. One of the big challenges would be that not long before this story in Matthew 14, Jesus's cousin John the Baptist, who was also like a powerful preacher and minister, John was killed by Herod, and we don't get a lot of writing about Jesus's thoughts and feelings during that time, but I can only imagine that he was certainly saddened by the loss of this family member who was also doing important ministry and who has been killed by the ruler or the middle manager of Judea, and killed for the ministry he was doing. So there is kind of this threat that goes with the ministry that Jesus and others who were following him were doing. And so just before this section, Jesus preached to a crowd, 5,000 or more people, and ends up miraculously feeding them all. And this is an incredible thing. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And so after this event, Jesus tells the disciples, I've got to go and spend some time by myself. You guys set out on the Sea of Galilee, take a boat, and go out. So they start crossing the sea. Another storm kicks up. And we heard, I'm not going to reread everything that was in this section, but they, the scripture doesn't say that the disciples were terrified when they were on the boat in a storm, but I think it's fair to assume that was not an encouraging situation for them. Where it says they were terrified is when they see Jesus walking on the water towards them, and they say, it's a ghost. Honestly, I'm not sure what other explanation it would spring to mind. I don't think that is a crazy thing for these guys to see someone walking towards them on the water, something that doesn't happen, and say, who could what would be more reasonable for them to, in the middle of a storm, see somebody walking on the water and go, oh, I bet that's our teacher, Jesus. He's just walking on the water towards us. Or going, I don't know what that is. Is this a ghost? I feel like that guess, not ridiculous given the circumstances. And it says they are terrified and cried out in fear. And Jesus immediately said to them, take heart, it is I, don't be afraid. He doesn't chastise them for being shocked. He doesn't yell at them for saying, why didn't you know it was me walking on the water like people always do? He says, don't be afraid. it's me, take heart. He's not meeting their fear with ridicule or discipline. He's meeting it with comfort and assurance. And then this blows me away. When Peter answers him, Lord, if it's you, command me to come out on the water. So in just a couple verses, Peter is going to experience this crisis of faith, and Jesus is going to say, oh, why did you doubt, Peter? But before that, I think he is exercising incredible faith. Jesus didn't say, take heart, don't be afraid, it's me. In fact, Peter, why don't you come out on the water? No, he doesn't say anything like that. For all we know, he is still just walking towards them on the boat. And Peter's the one who says, if it's really you, command me to walk out onto the water to you. He is requesting more in this act of faith than Jesus was suggesting. And so Jesus says, yeah, come out. And Peter starts walking on the water towards Jesus. Now, this moment where his faith starts to crack, says he saw the wind. He looked around. While he's walking on the water, he looks around, notices the storm, becomes afraid and starts to sink and says, Lord, save me. What does Jesus do? He immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him. Now he says, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? But here's why I think he said that. Jesus doesn't say, oh, Peter, where is your faith? Simply in response to Peter feeling overwhelmed by this enormous situation. See, what had happened was Peter was shown something incredible about the power of God and the presence of Jesus. He started walking on the water towards Jesus, and in the middle of that, looks around, sees that the storm is still raging, and he starts to sink, not because a storm isn't really a scary situation. He was just making a mountain out of a molehill. No, this was all incredible in like the worst way. But he was already walking on the water towards Jesus when he started to doubt and fear. Jesus met him in this moment of chaos and showed him the power that is there in the presence of God in the flesh. And while he was revealing that very clearly to Peter, Peter started looking around and going, you know what? Maybe this storm is more powerful than what I'm being shown. Maybe I should be more afraid of these waves than I am confident in the revealed power of Jesus. And in that moment, his faith slips and he starts to sink. But Jesus still rescues him. Jesus still brings him onto the boat, calms the storm. Jesus still uses Peter powerfully in ministry. Jesus didn't come to shame him because of his fear. He came to comfort him and reveal his power. And the moment when Jesus even says, Peter, why did you doubt? It was in that moment when, while revealing his power, Peter still took his eyes off of God. So I find this encouraging because, one, like I said, God isn't trying to shame us in our moment of fear. He's not trying to tell us that we are being ridiculous. God's not trying to gaslight us and tell us that there's nothing in life to be concerned about. He wants us to recognize the enormity of the situations we're in, and he wants to meet us there and say, but see how Jesus is all the while walking towards you on the water. See how Jesus is able to answer your fear by saying, it's me, don't be afraid, take heart. The storm's still here, but I'm here and I have power over the storm. And in fact, I can call you out in the midst of that chaos to walk with me in power. And if you don't lose sight of the fact that I am proving myself more powerful than this chaos, then you can walk in that comfort and in that confidence. And even in those moments where God is revealing himself in strength and we still go, I don't know, this is a pretty powerful storm. Jesus is still there to reach out his hand immediately to rescue us, to remind us that we need to exercise faith, and then to calm the storm when we get back in the boat together. So I want to encourage everyone here as we kind of start wrapping it up. I just want to encourage you, if you have been feeling maybe an uncommon sense of anxiety or fear, if there are so many unknowns for things that normally are not even a question. What's going on with your kids for school? What's going on with you and a normal commute to work? Things that you don't have to think about other times, and now they suddenly become these pressing concerns. Maybe your concerns are greater than that. Maybe you have been sick. Maybe you know someone who has been sick. Maybe you're in a terrible financial situation. The thing is, those things are real. They are really happening. And if you feel like they are putting pressure on you, it is because they are stressful situations. They are things that do concern people, and you are not being strange or ridiculous or immature to feel a sense of concern. But what I want to tell you is, Jesus is drawing near to you in those times. He has power over the chaos of your present situation. He is telling you, it's me. I'm here. Don't be afraid. You're not seeing a ghost. You're not imagining things. You're not dreaming that I exist. I really exist, and I'm here with you. And I want to meet you powerfully to show you that there is comfort and peace in the midst of this chaos. Keep your eyes on me, and I'm not going to let you sink. Even if you don't keep your eyes on me, I'm not going to let you sink. I'm drawing near to you. Take heart. So that's really what I wanted to say. You are not alone if you're feeling stressed or anxious. There are other people who feel it, and you're not alone, because God sees your situation. He knows that it exists, and he's there to meet you in it. He wants to bring comfort. He doesn't want to bring you shame. He doesn't want to bring you condemnation. He's here to rescue you. Keep your eyes on his outstretched hand. That's all. God bless you guys. Thank you.